Hello everybody, my name is Walter and this is episode 6 of the Redstone Commands Series. In this episode I want to talk about block data. So what is block data, how can you use it in commands, and also how can you change it? So let's start with some basic information about block data. What is all of that about? Well, some blocks are rather boring, like for example this quartz block here or a dirt block. They always look the same, independent of what's around them or, well, how you place them down. On the other hand, blocks like those pillars here change the shape, or the way they look at least, depending on how you've placed them down. Stairs blocks change their shape if other stairs blocks are around them. Plants grow. A piston becomes immovable when it extends. All of that is changes in the behavior or in the look of blocks without actually changing the block itself. It's still a piston, it's still a pillar, it's still a stairs block. And that's what block data or block states, as the Wiki calls them, are about. It's a way to memorize for the game what state a block is in. And usually it's either determined at the moment the block is placed, which is usually things like orientation, or it depends on the interaction with the surroundings. So powered state for redstone components, the shape of stairs and fences and walls and similar. Quite common examples are, well, powered states, growth stages, shapes, and orientations. Since they are determined at the moment of placement and not before, you can also not store block data inside of an item. Contrarily to NBT data, which you could store with the control middle mouse button. But since, yeah, you can't do this, it's not applicable here. Also, block data only applies to blocks, as the name already implies. Now, there are some minor exceptions. There are some examples where you can have an entity like this command block with a minecart, or a minecart with a command block, where the texture of the, in this case, command block is overwritten with the texture of a dispenser. And I showed you this in a previous episode. So what I have done here is overwritten the look of the command block with a dispenser, and this properties facing west. This facing west is actually block data, but in the notation of NBT data. So you can find occasionally block data hidden with an NBT data, but you will not find pure block data for an entity. And with that, one last thing to talk about is observers. Observers check for changes in block data. So a node block, for example, has 3 different block data. One is the node, which you can change by clicking on it. One is a powered state. And the other is the instrument, which can be changed via the block below the node block. Next, we have using block data in commands. Now, the first thing I should tell you here is that since the states a block can be in are highly limited and customized to the block, the same is true for the block data. So the options you have to select from are somewhat limited. The syntax or the notation to use are for block data, a rectangular bracket, and within that rectangular bracket you have first the name of that block data, then an equal sign, and then the value what you want to use for that block data. And if it's finished with that, you just close the rectangular bracket. If you want to add another value or another block data, then you will have to just put a comma and then continue with the next name and the next value. So here, rather simple example, I'm using a set block, which places just a quartz pillar with a certain alignment, in this case along the x-axis. If I want this to go along the z-axis, I just change that and now it goes in a different direction. If I leave it completely out, it will default to the y-axis, and that's rather important. A block will always have all of the applicable block data, but if you don't predefine that block data, it will default to a certain value, which is somewhere defined in the computer code or game code of Minecraft. If you want to make sure that it is in a specific state, you will have to, well, use commands with given block data. If you want to give it more than just one block data, you can see here an example. So here I'm placing some stairs that are facing west. The bottom half, which isn't really necessary since this is the default value, have an outer left corner shape and are also waterlogged. Now let's place that one. And you might notice there is a bit of a deviation. This is a straight shape and not a corner shape. And that is due to the fact that the corner shape is determined by the stairs around. And since there are no stairs around, this gets quickly updated to be a straight shape again. So basically it's placed as a corner shape, but updated to be a straight shape again. So that's very important to realize here. Also, as you can see, there is no real hierarchy. They are all just separated by commas, and there are no compounds or other strange things going on, which is a bit of a difference to NBT data, which can also have compounds. And as you can see, this is rather useful if you want to place a block in a very specific state, for example, being waterlogged. Another thing you can do is using this as an additional filter. So in this instance, I'm looking for quartz pillars that are aligned along the y-axis. And then I'm just replacing them with air in this kind of space here. So you can see this gets deleted the moment I place it down. If I place it in a different orientation, it remains because it does not have the right orientation. If I were to remove this from this command here, it's no longer a filter and it will delete the pillar independent of the orientation. So this is rather important to realize if you want to make sure that you only get the blocks you actually want to work with. Following that, let's talk about how you can actually get a list of what block data a block can have. We have basically three options here. The first is using the F3 menu in the game. So if you go in the F3 menu, look at the block, and look on the right side of this menu, you will see first the coordinates of the block, then what block you're looking at, and then potentially the block data with the current value. And following that, some tag lists. What those are, I will cover at a later point in a later episode. Now, here you can see, for example, the pillar only has a single block data, a stairs block has 4 block data, a slab only has 2, and yeah, this is an easy way to figure out what block data you have available. What you can't see that way is what options you have for the value of that block data, since you only see the current value. If you want to know in great detail what block data is available for a given block and what the options are and also what the default value is, then I would recommend looking it up in the wiki. Link for the list is in the description. And the final option is using the autocomplete function. So here I have started with a set block command, and basically you start with, well, what kind of block you want to place, and then you start with the rectangular bracket. Now I need to press the right key, so it notices that I actually want to have the next options available. A bit of a bug in my opinion, but nevertheless. Now I have a couple options. I can just close in the entire thing. Doesn't really make much sense. I could have left that out in this case. But I also have 2 applicable block data. I can change the type and I can make it waterlogged or, well, not waterlogged. So let's talk about the type. Right again. And now I can choose between the default state, top, which is the upside down, and the double state. And now I can choose again, do I want to add more block data or do I just want to close it and have the other block data default? And then you can see now I have a double slab. And this has the nice side effect that you see the available block data and you also see the available options for the values of each block data. Rather nice and quite useful in my opinion. Finally, you may have the question of how you can actually change block data of a given block. Now you have 2 options. Block data that is determined at the moment of placement has to be changed forcefully using, for example, a set block or a fill command, or also cloning it from somewhere else. So essentially, if you want to rotate this stairs block, you will have to remove it and override it with another stairs block in the correct orientation. That's essentially what you have to do there. Now, block data that is determined by the interaction with the surroundings can be manipulated by changing the surroundings. So for example, just adding another stairs block and you have now a corner block, or powering a redstone component. Now, there is one little exception to this rule here, and that is the debug stick. This is a bit cheaty, but you can essentially give yourself the debug stick using a give command, and that allows you to change block data directly. With the left mouse button, you can select what block data you want to change, and with the right mouse button, you can toggle through the options. And you can see here, it doesn't actually react to the surroundings, but as you can see, the moment it gets a block update from somewhere else, it will update again and go back to what it should be according to, well, the surroundings. And with that, we have reached the end of this episode about block data. I hope you enjoyed it, and well, see ya!